Gulliver's Lilliputian Adventure. Once upon a time there lived a doctor named Gulliver. When Gulliver was unemployed in the city, he found a job on a ship. Thus began a new life on the seas. The first days of his voyage went very well. He started to get used to the new life on the ship. But after a while there was a very violent storm. The ship, struggling for hours on the giant waves, finally turned on its side. Gulliver and a few crew members managed to launch a dinghy before the ship sank. Immediately afterwards, their ship sank into the water and disappeared. They couldn't last long in this old boat either. And finally the boat was overturned by a strong wave. Each man was tossed to one side. Gulliver struggled on the water for hours, trying to stay alive. Finally, current helped him and he made it to the shore, exhausted. He had no idea where this place was. He was in no mood to think anyway. He passed out on the sand. When he woke up, he saw that he was tied all over. He was surrounded by lots of tiny people about an inch tall. Gulliver looked at the tiny people in amazement and they looked at Gulliver with the same amazement. At that moment, Gulliver felt a tingling sensation in his body. When he looked up, he saw that his body was covered with tiny arrows. Scared of him, the little people were still shooting arrows. "Stop! Please don't! I won't hurt you, don't worry." Gulliver stayed there for a few days. Bound hand and foot, they gave him food and water. A few days later they brought Gulliver to a big carriage, drawn by hundreds of tiny horses, and took him to the town where they lived. This little city was called Lilliput. They reserved the biggest building in the city for him. But even to enter this big house, Gulliver had to crawl on the ground. Realizing that no harm could come from Gulliver, the little people decided to introduce him to their king. So Gulliver reached the kingdom of Lilliput. The king allowed Gulliver to stay here. But in return he had to work and help with the work in the city. Gulliver signed a piece of paper saying what he could and could not do. For example, he needed permission to pick up a member of the public. Under these conditions, Gulliver started to live in Lilliput. He helped the people to build buildings and carry water. As the days passed, he learned that the little people had a big problem. The neighbors' soldiers want to invade Lilliput. Word came that they were preparing for a great battle. Gulliver offered his help to the king. "If you want, I can help you with this, sire." The king was very pleased. He thanked him and accepted. Meanwhile, the warships of the neighboring country completed their preparations. They were waiting for the order to move in the harbor. This news got all the Lilliputians thinking. For Gulliver, solving this problem was a piece of cake. He asked everyone to gather as much wire as they could find and bring it back. Gulliver joined all the wires the people found together. He made a long, strong rope. When night came, he took the long string with him and crossed to the opposite shore. He reached the small harbor without being seen by the enemy soldiers. He tied the ships there together with sweat. Then, with a few soldiers on board, he towed them back to the shores of Lilliput. The people of Lilliput who were waiting for him in the harbor rejoiced. They had captured the enemy soldiers. Now they had nothing to fear from the other side. The king thanked Gulliver and rewarded him. Gulliver was very happy to have won the king's trust. One day, a fire broke out in the palace. As soon as Gulliver heard about the fire, he filled one of the ships in the harbor with water and poured it over the palace. The fire was extinguished instantly. Gulliver and the king were on very good terms. The king consulted him when making a decision. Of course, this started to disturb the other assistants in the palace. They were jealous of Gulliver's success. "My king, we've been hearing rumors. Gulliver wants to grow strong on the mountain. Take your place and become the king of Lilliput." "Oh, yes, my king, we all know how powerful he is. If he tries to attack us, we won't be able to resist him. Well, we can't live in such danger." The people are uneasy. The king was impressed by the words of his helpers and decided to punish Gulliver. "I will not give him the death penalty because of the good he has done in the past. He will be blinded, forbidden to walk around the city, and his food will be reduced." When an employee at the palace who loved Gulliver heard about the king's decision, he rushed to Gulliver and told him what had happened. "I could talk to the king and talk him out of this decision." But the decision had been made and the king had no intention of backing down. Gulliver realized that he had no choice but to leave the island. At night, he took the enemy ships in the harbor and sailed across the sea to the opposite island. Sometimes he had to walk and sometimes he had to swim. Finally, he reached the island that the people of Lilliput called the enemy. When Gulliver returned his ships, the people realized that he was not malicious. They gave him a guide and he went to meet the king of the country. The king also welcomed Gulliver very well. Gulliver told the king everything that had happened. The king told him he could stay as long as he wanted. Gulliver was very surprised, although he had stolen his ships. The king's lenient behavior was something he had never seen in Lilliput. Gulliver was spending the nights outside because there was no house for him. The people of Lilliput see this country as an enemy, but they are all good people. One day, while traveling around the island, he found a broken-down boat that was his size. So our boat washed ashore on this island. He immediately went to see the king. The king sent many soldiers to help Gulliver. Together they started to repair the boat. In a few days the boat was ready to sail again. Gulliver was very happy. He could finally leave the land of the dwarves and go home. Gulliver thanked the king and his people for welcoming him and set sail. He had a difficult journey ahead of him in this tiny boat. Even a small storm would cause the boat to tip over. After sailing on the open sea for a few days, he came across a ship. He started shouting for help. "Over here! Help me! Hey!" Somehow he managed to make himself heard. They approached the boat and took Gulliver on board. And Gulliver was saved. He couldn't wait to tell what had happened to him. Who would believe him when he told about the little people? The city of Lilliput and the king of the two countries? Gulliver was so happy to finally be home with his family. But he also felt that there were many more adventures waiting for him on the seas.